a few brief remarks from me because I have been invited to join you here for this morning's session, and I gladly do so because what is happening in the world's cities is not only a matter of regulation, it is not only a matter of standard setting and of adopting policies. I believe it is actually something that is to the largest extent, in fact, a question of a whole new market opening up. If you take the INDCs, these national climate strategies that have now been presented by over 185 countries to the international community, and you just look at what is actually envisaged and what could happen over the coming years, then I'm sure many of you will also recognize that there is a whole new economy emerging there. In UNEP we refer to it as a green economy, you can call it a low carbon economy, you can just call it a more efficient economy. It's your choice. It doesn't matter what label you use, but it is an economy that will be measured in terms of billions and trillions, not millions, and not in terms of pilot schemes. We are going to see transformations in our energy systems, in our transport systems, in our buildings, and even in our agriculture production systems that are unprecedented in terms of transformation, I believe, probably in human history, but certainly in terms of our modern era of economic development. Disruption on a level, or in perhaps an analogy to the appearance of the internet, the information economy, I think it is that kind of magnitude that we are talking about in terms of what is emerging in the run-up to Paris, through Paris, and perhaps most importantly after Paris. If you are looking at a business case of what that economy will look like, then the cities clearly are the point of concentration around which many of the, at least financially, most significant changes will be likely to occur. Renewable energy over the last 10 years has already demonstrated what a kind of revolution in the marketplace can occur with the right policies, public policy incentives, yes, subsidies sometimes, but also sometimes just correcting distortions in the market. We today have a renewable energy economy that yields $270 billion of investment every year and has literally in one decade moved renewables from being marginal to being 50% of all new electricity generating infrastructure last year worldwide. This is the kind of pace and scale we're talking about. And alongside that is the issue of efficiency. To many of us, it seemed for a long time the lowest hanging fruit, and as I often say, it just kept on hanging on the tree and not dropping, which is perhaps an interesting question that you might want to focus on this morning. Why is it that something that so obviously makes sense has proven to be more difficult to scale up and to mainstream in our urban economy than a completely new disruptive technology like solar or wind or geothermal? Whether it is district energy, whether it is the efficiency in which we build and construct our urban infrastructure, whether it is the issue of mobility in urban areas, all of these, I think, are extremely promising markets from a business perspective that are looking for solutions but are not yet finding in the market that is offering them entry points the right connection. Whether it is district energy, whether it is the materials that are used in buildings, whether it is also the efficiency of appliances. We, for instance, estimate that if you were to introduce worldwide the most efficient air conditioning and climate control technology that is already on the market today across the global economy, you would literally, just with this existing technology level, be able to shut down 2,500 coal-fired power stations in the world. This is just the simple step from the least efficient to the most efficient technology in climate management inside buildings. So with these few examples, ladies and gentlemen, all I wanted to say is what you are looking at here this morning, I think, is part of a very rapidly changing economic environment driven by environmental change, dictating new technologies, new management systems, and giving rise and birth to new markets. Into those markets, we also are looking for the world of business to adjust what it can offer. And part of that is also something that we are working on in the Energy Efficiency Hub as part of what we call the Sustainable Energy for All initiative of the Secretary General, coming together with business, helping cities, helping local government planners to identify opportunities to, if you want, do the pre-feasibility that will allow then business to really step up to that market and offer very concrete products, technologies and solutions. So once again, apologies for having been inserted into this and usurped your opening remarks, but it's a pleasure to have joined you, and I wish you a very productive workshop. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So now I promise, François, that you will not be interrupted, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
So thank you, Thibaud, and I will come back. So, ladies and gentlemen, the UNEP and SE4ALL asked me to present what has been done, what we have done as ADEME in France regarding neutral carbon cities and territories. So just to explain what is ADEME. ADEME is Agence de l'Environnement et de la Maîtrise de l'Énergie, the French public agency depending on the Ministry of Energy and Environment. We are an agency of experts mainly, but we deal with, I may say, two main issues. First one is supporting innovation and developing scenarios and forecasts for the French government. And the second activity is more dedicated to local actions, since we have directions in each of the French administrative regions, working with local authorities, with companies at this level. So in fact, in 2004, in France was launched the first national climate plan, targeting the factor 4 at the horizon of 2050. And this plan was implemented at local level through what we call now climate energy territories plan. So it was concerning cities, but also some more rural territories. And ADEME developed the methodologies and was accompanying the local authorities to develop these plans. Furthermore, in 2008, we had a law, what we call the Grenelle Law on Environment, and it makes these plans mandatory for all local authorities above 50,000 inhabitants. So 450 collectivities were targeted through this mandatory scheme in 2008. And last August 2015, we had a new law in France for the energy transition, called a law for the energy transition and green growth. And in this law, which was adopted by the Parliament, the threshold for this mandatory scheme is now 20,000 inhabitants. So right now we have more than 600 collectivities which implement this plan. In the law also we had, beside this mandatory disposition, we have also incentive through a call for territories, through what we call positive energy territories for green growth, and more than 400 territories were already selected through this call for best territories who implement above this local climate energy plan some steps toward a positive energy territory. So in fact, the climate energy territory plan goes through 4 steps, and this is the methodology. The first one is a prefiguration, and it means that the collectivity has to organize itself and organize a consultation with at territory level with companies, citizens, NGOs, and with the administration itself. The second step is through a diagnostic, and then ADEME has developed an inventory methodology for the local authority with, you may know, several scopes depending on the GHG taking into account, diagnostic on industry, transport, waste, and so on. The third step is the mobilization of stakeholders and the definition of the action plan. And the fourth one is the implementation of the plan itself. So as ADEME, we develop a resource center of climate energy territory plans. We've developed some tools for diagnostic, but also for the building the plan itself, the methodologies. We train the administration of the collectivities and an observatory of this climate energy territory plan in order to have this resource center. We also develop some labels for the best territories involved in these plans. The second step, beside these plans, we also bring some support, financial support. So in France there is two support, one done by the Caisse des dépôts et consignations, which is a financial institution in France working with local authorities in order to have development of, for example, very climate friendly solutions in the territories. And as ADEME, we have two financial support for the local authorities. The third one is from a fund we manage on renewable heat, and this renewable heat fund support the investments of local authorities in all renewable energies coming from and producing heat, for example, wood and boilers with wood, but also geothermal or solar. And we support also district heating network through this fund for local authorities. But beyond that, we have a fund for innovation, and this fund is not dedicated specifically to local authorities, but to companies who innovate in the different solutions for cities, but also more generally for low carbon technologies. And with this fund, we support some experimentation at the territory levels and at the city levels through, for example, smart grids, innovation and experimentation. We have more than 10,000 households involved in experimentation of new solutions with smart grids. We have experimentation of new mobility in cities. And so we support in order to have this solution developed and going to the market and the business case for these solutions. Just to conclude on the international issues, since we have developed these tools in France, we also have cooperation with other countries and territories, and so we adapt these methodologies of climate energy territory plan to other situations. And for example, in Brazil with Minas Gerais, we developed this solution and this methodology with the administration of Minas Gerais in Brazil. And they even create an observatory in Brazil in Minas Gerais of the climate energy plan. And the objectives at the level of the state is a decrease between 17 and 20% in 2030 of GHG. We also have cooperation and adapt this methodology in China with the city of Wuhan, with Senegal, with the city of Dakar, and in Morocco. And at the French level, we gather the companies who are involved in experimentation I just explained before within a framework which is called Vivapolis, and it's in order to gather all the French companies to propose solutions at the international level. So I think we'll hear much more example, and I thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, François. I think Achim Steiner just spoke about the issues, the difficulties we can see in scaling up energy efficiency, which is obvious, but your presentation gives us examples of lessons learned and on what to do to scale up these technologies. I will now like to call up to the floor the participants of this first panel, namely Mr. Hans-Jørgen Koch, who is Chief Executive Officer of Nordic Energy Research, Mr. Olivier Biancarelli, the Vice President of Decentralized Solutions for Cities and Regions of ENGIE, the Professor Datuk Ismail Ibrahim, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Iskander Regional Development Authority of Malaysia, and Mr. Mark Watts, Executive Director of C40 Cities. So we will very much talk about the experiences at the city level and at the national level and see how they articulate. I mean, it is very much in our belief at SE4ALL and at UNEP that cities are very much the place where most of the innovations are taking place in terms of energy efficiency and low carbon technologies. But they also need to coordinate and they need the support from the national state. So we will see how this cooperation can take place. So this panel will be about Q&A, but I understand that before that, Mr. Hans-Jørgen Koch wants to give a couple of remarks based on a presentation. So I will ask you to come up here and to do your presentation, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am, as you can see here, CEO of the cooperation between the Nordic countries, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland and Iceland, on energy research and also on analysis of common important issues and of building scenarios. So the first slide I would like to show is on the general development of Nordic energy-related CO2. And as you can see, in a more than 20-year, in a 15-year period, in a 25-year period, it has been relatively stable. And at the same time, you have seen a significant GDP growth at the same level as you see in most developed countries among the OECD countries. So what you can see here is a clear decoupling between GDP growth and energy-related CO2, and you can note that for a period of more than 20 years. So in the Nordic countries, we have demonstrated for a 20-year period that it is possible to decouple GDP from energy-related CO2, and there are no indications of that should have had any harmful effect on the economic growth. If you ask the question whether the Nordic countries then have left some carbon leakage or carbon print behind us in countries like China and India, we have looked into that question. We don't have exact figures, and therefore we don't have made any curve here. But it would probably, if we had the exact figures, it would probably demonstrate that we have had, maybe have had more that as a stable development in CO2 emissions, maybe not really a decrease as we see here, but there are no indications, there are clear indications that there is still a decoupling between GDP and energy-related CO2. This is a result of a number of efforts. One of them, which has been important, has been to establish incentives for energy efficiency and for conversion to non-fossil fuels. And that has been helped by a relatively tough carbon taxation in the most of our countries. So that has, and also we have had a careful energy planning that has led to a high level of district heating, combined heat and power, and energy efficiency in all sectors of the economy. And it has also, there has been a very strong conversion to renewable energy sources in the electricity market. So the electricity market is an important player in this general figure. And if we look at the future, we have developed a Nordic carbon neutral scenario, And according to that, it would be possible to have the economic growth shown here, and at the same time to continue to reduce CO2 emissions. If we look at the electricity markets, then the IEA has shown that if the world should stick to the 2-degree scenario, then the level of carbon intensity should develop along the dotted line, the dotted curve you can see on this slide. And that means that we should come down to a level where we now are at a level of 500 grams CO2 per kilowatt hour. Then we should in 2040 be down at a level of 100 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour. The interesting fact is that the Nordic countries in average already are at that level where the world should be in 2040. And that is why we claim that in relation to the electricity market, the Nordic countries are 25 years ahead of where the world should be on carbon intensity. But that is, of course, not the entire story. Because if we look at Nordic CO2 emissions from the energy sector, then electricity and heat is only covering something like 30%. And that means that there's still a lot to do in transport, industry, and other areas. And as you can see later on in my presentation, in some fields the Nordic countries have made a lot of progress, but in other fields there's still a lot of things to do. The Nordic Energy Research is producing a publication called Nordic Energy Technology Perspectives that will be published in 2016, and that is made in close cooperation with the International Energy Agency in Paris. And urban energy systems will be at the core of that publication due to the importance of what is being done on transportation, on industry, and on integration of variable renewables. If we look at the map of the Nordic countries, we have here presented where we have the urban areas. The darker the color, the more urbanized the areas are. And the problem is, of course, that in the urban areas are the areas where you consume most energy. But fortunately, it is also the areas where there is the best possibilities to have very efficient solutions on the greenhouse gas emissions problems. So therefore, it is an opportunity that we expect that the urban areas, like in other parts of the world, there will be a strong growth of the urban areas, the population in the urban areas. So therefore, it is very important what is happening in the cities. All the Nordic capitals have the same ambitions to be carbon neutral in the course of the next couple of decades. If we compare the Nordic urban areas with other urban areas, you can see that we have a more consumption of energy per person due to the cold climate, but we have lower CO2 emissions due to different issues, district heating, energy efficiency, etc. Electric vehicles is certainly a possibility, in particular in urban areas, due to the better possibilities for electric vehicles charging. Bicycling is an important factor in a capital like Copenhagen, where more than 50% of the population are using bicycles on their daily way to the work. Waste heat utilization and district heating is an important factor. In Norway, you have had a very impressive development in electric vehicles, so that more than 30% of the electric vehicles sold in Europe in 2014 were sold in Norway. And it covered 17% of the national car sales January to September in 2015. Here's a picture of the cars with the lights on are electric vehicles on one of the entrance roads to Oslo in Norway. One of our research projects in Nordic energy research has demonstrated that even if we have a full electrification of the private car fleet in 2030, that would only require 7% of the electricity production. And that 7% of the electricity production could easily be provided by renewable energy sources. There are also in the Nordic countries a huge resource in biomass, and another of our research projects has demonstrated that we could, without serious difficulties, double the production of biomass output from Nordic forests, including an enhanced production of wood for construction of buildings. And this picture demonstrates the tallest building in the world where the main construction elements are made of wood, and in that way you save a lot of CO2 emissions from not using concrete and steel. And this is therefore really represents a carbon sink. Final slide is simply an announcement of that we have a presentation tomorrow in the Nordic Pavilion at 12 o'clock, where the IEA's executive director will speak and the ministers responsible for energy in the individual Nordic countries. Thank you for your attention.
Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you very much. It's always very impressive to see what the Nordic countries are doing. I mean, you're really in the forefront of many technologies, and it's great to see how you are moving forward. But thankfully, Northern Europe is not the only region in the world where things are moving forward. And I would now like to move toward questions to the panelists. And maybe I will start with Professor Datuk Ismail Ibrahim from Iskander to ask you what are your renewable energy and energy efficiency targets for 2025, and what you've done so far for, as we know that Iskander in Malaysia is also a very advanced region in the Southeast Asian area in terms of low carbon technology, low carbon policies, sorry.
Thank you. Before I proceed to explain about what measures have been taken in Iskander, Malaysia, but for the benefit of our audience today, you may not know what Iskander is and where is Iskander located. So by way of introduction, Iskander, Malaysia is an economic region situated in Malaysia at the southern peninsula. It measures about 2,200 kilometers square, launched way back in 2006. The whole idea about creating this economic region is to make it to become a high income region by the year 2025. So this is a 20-year plan of economic growth that involves very high investment and very rapid development. So over the last 9 years, we have been able to secure more than 40 billion USD of investment. And such a huge investment will definitely have an effect in the way in which industry operates, the way in which townships are being expanded, as well as the way in which factories and other activities that generates economic growth. Hence, way back in 2006, when we first launched this region, we immediately also launched our vision, that is to make this region as sustainable as possible. Hence, the idea about greening of the economy, this idea about creating under the project, which is smart city as well as low carbon society. Now, when we look at the rapid economic development that is taking place in Iskander over a period of 20 years, it is estimated that the energy to be consumed will be threefold, But if we don't do anything about it, definitely this will be unproductive. That is why we have launched a policy under the low carbon society to make sure that even though we will continue to increase in terms of energy, but it has to be done effectively and efficiently, and also reduce by 24%, which otherwise it would be triple. So that's how the whole idea started. And we have actually launched this project on the low carbon society initiative by looking at green economy, secondly, looking at green community, and thirdly, looking at green environment. Now, I would like to focus definitely on one of the action under green economy, which is green building and construction. Now, earlier it is mentioned about a way in which we would influence development. So, for example, that the district cooling is one example under the green building and construction, where overall, we should be able to save up to 21% of the energy if we were to introduce these sort of measures. So these are some of the examples that we have been putting on the ground to make sure that while we are experiencing economic growth, while we are doing a lot of physical development, but at the same time, we have been doing policy reforms to make sure that it is well regulated, and so that the people who are involved in the development conforms to the way forward, especially under the low carbon society initiative. So that is how we've been doing our work in Iskander, Malaysia, to make sure that we achieve our target, not only from economic perspective, but also from the environment. Thank you.
I don't know how this works. Is it work? Yes. These microphones are too high-tech for me, I'm afraid. Thank you very much. Very interesting presentation. I mean, it's really great to see how policies can facilitate the development of low-carbon technologies and low-carbon regions. I now would like to turn to ENGIE as a company. So Olivier, I understand that you're the Vice President of Decentralized Solutions for Cities and Regions, which means that this decentralized solutions definitely shows that you have a very specific approach on cities that, as I understand, integrates many different aspects and areas. So I would like to ask you if you could tell us a bit more about this specific approach to low-carbon cities and what yourself you see as building blocks for the carbon-free cities. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm part of a quite big group, 150,000 people, 75 billion turnover. And in my group, we strongly believe, we have deep conviction that cities are essential key players for the energy transition. And ENGIE wants to become the leader of the energy transition in the world. So if cities are essential, it's for very basic reason. I think you perfectly know in this room. You know that 50% of the population live in cities today, probably 75% in 2050. That even if only 50% of the population live in cities, it represents 75% of the energy consumption and something like around 80% of the GHG emission. So when we have to deal with energy transition, we have to be very focused on cities. And this is the reason why ENGIE has decided to reorganize the group and to create a new transversal business line worldwide called Decentralized Solution for Cities and Territories. And I will take this new division at the 1st of January 2016. So it's something new, and it reflects quite perfectly well the issue we have to deal with. So our ambition in this new context, new organization, is to become one of the global leaders in offerings for cities and regions. And how to achieve this? This is the main question, of course. And we think that very pragmatically we have to act on all levers. I mean, of course, on energy, because this is our core business, but not only on energy, also on smart lighting, smart building, green mobility, water and waste with some of our partners, like Suez, for instance, but also smart security and city operating system. These are, for us, the building blocks of carbon neutral cities. And with all these blocks, what we are trying to do is to create, to integrate solutions, bundle solutions with these building blocks for to customize offers for each type of territory in the world. Because of course, cities are very different from a continent, from a country to another. So at the end, we have to have a very customized, tailor-made solution for each territory.
Thank you very much. Very interesting, very interesting insights indeed. I would now like to turn to Mark Watts, who is heading C40, which is a major cities network to promote low carbon solutions. So we've talked about different experiences in different regions and in one of the largest company in the field. I now would like to ask you, in C40, in which sectors do you yourself focus in the different cities you work with?
We have one microphone. Well, the answer really is in all areas where mayors have got powers to affect climate action, and that's pretty broad. In our estimation, about a third of the remaining safe carbon budget will be determined by urban policy decisions, and most of those decisions will be made in the next 5 years. So mayors who are in power right now will be making decisions that determine about a third of the remaining carbon budget. And we therefore work with mayors across 7 initiative areas: energy, waste, transport, finance, urban development, measurement and planning, and adaptation. And in broadly 2 ways. First, in helping cities to develop concrete plans, to have an emissions inventory, a clear reduction target, and then an action plan for how to deliver it, because we know from our own data that cities that have got a plan deliver 3 times as much action as the ones that don't, and we do that through now the Compact of Mayors, which is an analogous to the INDC, something we're working on with ICLEI and some of the other city networks. But then secondly, where most of our effort goes is in peer-to-peer exchange. So the exchange of good ideas between mayors so that you can accelerate action through copying, or as Matthew's boss here, the Deputy Mayor of London, is with us in the audience. Mayor Boris Johnson would say stealing. We had a big debate at our conference the other day whether it's stealing or copying or sharing. But anyway, it's the exchange of ideas between our cities. So we divide this network, which is 82 cities, mostly megacities, then into a series of 16 smaller networks on individual subjects across those topics. And a big one for us, you will be relieved to hear, given the subject matter here is energy and district energy, and more broadly energy consumption in buildings, because for our members, the big megacities, 50% of their carbon footprint comes from energy consumption in buildings, and it's much higher in some, the sort of the Londons, New Yorks, Hong Kongs. It'll be pushing more like 70 or 75%. We're really pleased, in fact, to be working with UNEP around your district energy in cities initiative. It's been quite striking for me this week, and there's been a real buzz around the cities agenda. I think over 400 mayors at City Hall, but to see so many of them standing up and talking very knowledgeably about the role of district energy, particularly cities like Vancouver, Copenhagen. But we're delighted that UNEP is now focusing on this with us and recognising the role of cities, because there's huge gains to be made by working with city leaders. You've got some real levers to pull in this area.
Thank you very much. So I take from your presentation the need to act quickly and to try to address as many sectors as possible at the city level, which is an extremely relevant sector. So these policies will lead to low carbon regions, low carbon zones, but they bring to other benefits, and probably they're building new societies. And I know that this idea of a low carbon society has been developed by Iskander. So could you please tell us a bit more?
Thank you. When we established Iskander Malaysia, with the launching of the region, we prepare a plan which we call the Comprehensive Development Plan. And in that Comprehensive Development Plan, it talks about 3 areas of concern under the sustainability agenda, which is economy, social, as well as the environment. Now, under the environment, we came to know about low carbon as well as smart city. So way back in 2011, we launched the Low Carbon Society project, and immediately the following year, in COP18 in Doha, we were able to launch the blueprint for Iskander Malaysia that sets out the framework for low carbon society for that particular region. Now, the following year, in COP19, we were able to come up with the implementation projects for Iskander Malaysia. And we launched that in Warsaw, I think in COP19. Now, subsequently, last year, at the SE4ALL climatic change organized by United Nations, we were recognized as one of city regions that is under the Accelerator Partner Program. So we are glad and we are happy the fact that our work has been recognized, and we have continued from there since. Now, this year in COP21, we were able to introduce a set of documents where we are now turning policy into action at the local authority level. Now, in Iskander Malaysia, being a region, it has 5 local authorities. Now, we must compel upon these local authorities to do their part, because they, after all, are local government. They are responsible to make sure that their authority are well looked after, especially from the environment perspective. So we have launched those 5 implementation plans for low carbon for each of the 5 local authorities. Now, that's how we journey through this, and to make sure that as we face the challenges of growth, we will involve the stakeholders like the people, the government, and definitely most importantly, the players who are involved in the whole development scenario for this region in Iskander Malaysia.
Thank you very much. It's very exciting to see the progression and to hear also that sustainable energy for all is playing a role here. So thank you very much for these insights. We started late, so I will get a couple. I will take a couple of minutes more to ask a couple of more questions. The first one would be again to ENGIE. So we've talked about this need for an integrated approach. I was wondering if you could tell us how, at the city level, the coordination of this integrated approach is ensured.
Yeah, for a point of view, this sort of integrated approach is more and more developed, because the first reason is very simple, because it's what cities expect. Many cities develop quite holistic views and expect service providers to propose comprehensive solutions. And when we see the cities with the highest ambition for CO2 emissions reduction, we see that very often they are choosing a holistic approach. This is the case for Copenhagen. This is the case for Berlin with its climate neutral Berlin 2050, or for Rotterdam. But this is also the case for green field cities, new cities. For instance, cities with which we are working, the kingdom cities in Saudi Arabia. The second reason why cities are organizing themselves to have a much more integrated approach is that this is clearly more efficient because synergies of system enable deeper cuts in emissions first, and also cost efficiencies. And this is very clear with solutions like cogenerations or tree generation. One of the best examples we have, at least in my group, is the tree generation system, so power, heat and cool for London Olympic Park. And the third reason why this integrated approach is a right one is that it's very pragmatic, because at the end of the day it's a la carte approach, and cities choose what they want. They can pick what they need in their catalog, because at the end of the day each city has to determine its own way, of course.
Thank you very much. So we have a set of solutions that are already here and that really need to be implemented, obviously. Mark, how do you think that we can promote this implementation? What do you think coordination between cities can do to help this?
Well, I think the coordination between cities is essential, mainly because the timescales we have to act are so short. If you think a third of the remaining carbon budget will be decided in the next 5 years, then there isn't the time for each individual city to work out its own entirely unique plan. They need to be looking around the world and copying the best practice, as you've just described, from each other and implementing it. And indeed, I was on a panel at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development yesterday, and an interesting point was made from one of the business leaders that he wouldn't see a city client as a place to go to be tremendously innovative, because they don't tend to want to try new things, which was being presented as a negative. I'd actually see it as a positive, which is, if you're a mayor of a great city, yes, it's true, you'd rather be the second to do something than the first, because you want to know it's going to work. And therefore, you're constantly on the lookout for something that's been done somewhere else, been delivered successfully, and preferably the mayor got re-elected. And so what things like networks like C40 do is allow cities to share those great ideas. And we see a really rapid acceleration of good ideas, from everything from district heating to cycle hire to the use of LED street lighting, that moves much quicker than it ever would do if cities were trying them completely on their own. And I think we kind of know the roadmap to carbon neutral cities. Broadly speaking, we're going to have compact, dense cities rather than suburban and sprawling mobility based on mass transit, public transport, cycling and walking. But the third and critical element is the most successful cities will be the ones that are most coordinated, most connected into the rest of the world, most able to learn from things like Johannesburg's green bonds, from Tokyo's emissions trading, from Copenhagen's district heating, from London's congestion charge. And I think that's the fact that city leaders have shown a great propensity to work together through organisations like C40 is a reason for some optimism. It's a tough job for nation states to collaborate, and when they get it wrong, it ends in wars and trade barriers. When cities compete with each other, they compete with a race to the top. They compete by investing more in their own city to make it more attractive to business, to attract the best people to the city, and that gives us a reason to invest in cities as real agents for change on climate change.
Thank you. It's great to hear some optimism. I mean, the COP21 list seems to be moving well, but we always need more optimism in order to move even forward. I would now like to take a couple of quick minutes to open the floor to the audience and for you to ask questions to any of the panelists. I believe we will not have time to take more than 2 questions. So please go ahead and ask questions. I don't know if we have a mic available. There is one. Great. So any question? Jennifer, please introduce yourself before asking the question, and let us know whether you want to ask a question to the whole panel or to one specific speaker. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you all for very interesting comments. I'm Jennifer Lakey with the World Resources Institute. And I had a question about how you're finding the challenges and overcoming the challenges associated with the financing of these strategies, and whether and if low carbon finance mechanisms are in place, or if you have recommendations about the type of financing structures and programs that you would require in order to succeed with your visions.
So we can take a second question. The gentleman here, please. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Sam Barnard with the Overseas Development Institute, and I'd actually follow up. I had a question of the very same topic, but I'd also want to make it a little bit more specific about climate finance.
Could you please speak a bit louder, because there are lots of noises there, so
Sure.
we don't hear very clearly here.
I just wanted to follow up that question with making it a little bit more specific about climate finance specifically, and whether with the Green Climate Fund opening up new opportunities for possibly actors such as cities to be accredited to directly access finance. Have you, particularly in Malaysia, have there been any efforts to access climate funds to support your low carbon activities, and any barriers in that area?
Thank you. So 2 questions about finance. I understand that our third panel today will be dedicated to investment, so we might have the chance to go further into these issues. But before that, who would like to answer first? Mark.
I'm so glad you asked those questions. Indeed, I'm going straight from this to a C40 meeting over in the Green Zone, where we're publishing some new research which analyses what are the biggest barriers and opportunities to city action. And without any doubt, the single biggest obstacle to cities accelerating their ambitions is the lack of available finance from the international community, and indeed, to a certain extent, from nation states. We actually, a couple of days ago, launched a first small attempt to counteract that, because most of the global green facilities are not directly available to cities. We've now launched a project finance facility for C40 cities, supported by the German government and the IADB. But I'd say it's 2 elements. One is the capital funding, but actually there's a first obstacle, which is the grant funding to support cities who've got great technically designed schemes, but need the legal financial expertise to help them make them investment ready in a way that's going to attract that financing, whether it's from the private sector, from multilateral agencies, or from nation states. So, number 1 issue.
Yeah, if I may address those questions, it's quite interesting. I think before we mention about the word financing, I think we have to step back and ask ourselves, for those places that we want to tackle these issues, are they fully aware of and understand the whole issue about what we're going to do, what we are going to do here? Unless and until our target groups understand what is this all about, they might not even want to talk about financing. Because for the society that I come from, we are still in the development stage. We have no choice. Our resources are limited. Therefore, when we talk about financing, it comes from 2 angles. Number 1 is by the provision of grant by either the government or some other agencies from UN or whatever to do the projects. Now, number 2 is perhaps to compel upon the investors themselves to set aside money to make sure that their projects would incorporate all these elements, to make sure that it is not only doable but sustainable. So I think this is how we should look at financing in the first instance. Now, the second limb of it is the way that we tackle financing is also to not to give grant, but to do the other way around, which is by the provision of incentives. We will introduce tax incentives from development tax or real property gain tax or whatever tax that we can actually waive to those type of investors or developers who have embraced these projects. So this is how we want to tackle it. In other words, number one, we need to bring about awareness and understanding on those people who we want to be involved. Secondly, the sources of financing will have to come on a case-to-case basis, depending on the intensity and depending on the way that we want to see it happen on the ground. So that is how we actually do in Malaysia.
Any other comments?
No, beside what has been said, just to keep in mind that, of course, financing is an issue, but some of our solutions for district cooling, for instance, are also a way to reduce costs in cities. I mean, for instance, in Malaysia, we have a project, Siberiava, and the result is reducing costs by 35%. So financing, of course, is an issue, but it's also a way to manage a city differently.
I would say that in the Nordic countries, financing is not a big issue. If we look at one of the important areas, which is converting to district heating, then a combination of a relatively heavy carbon taxation and the economic benefits of converting to surplus electricity and heat make it very favorable for consumers to convert to district heating. So financing is not a big issue.
Yes, regarding financing, I think it's, as Jørgen said, it's maybe not the problem for cities in developed countries, but in developing countries, of course, there is a big issue regarding financing, and it could come from a development bank at regional level or world level. However, I think that there is still something lacking in the process. We have commitments of cities, of territories, also from companies, but we need MRV in order, I think, to be able to build some financial mechanisms, and then we need to have reporting and some methodologies in order to see how the commitments, we are at ADEME working with companies in order to secure and to be able to verify the commitments of companies, but I think it should be done also at the level of territories and cities. And I think this is an important issue for the future.
Thank you very much. This discussion could go on for hours and hours, I guess, but unfortunately, we will have to leave the room for the next panel. I just would like to summarize very quickly, or not summarizing, so just highlighting a couple of important points I got from the discussions. I think we have great experiences from France, from Nordic countries, from the Iskander regions, and other technologies or cooperation that have been developed here. I understand that, I mean, one of the key issue that came out is that cities are key, but I think we all know this, and that we need to act quickly. That's another important thing. I also note that we need to have different approaches for different cities, and I think all the presentations here have showcased that, and that we also need to have integrated approach. We've talked a lot about district energy, about building, but transport, waste management, water are also key issues. So I think the panel deserves a round of applause now, and after that I will call the next panel. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. I have to say I'm very glad as Deputy Mayor to introduce this panel, but I'm also very glad to see a more gender balance, as you said, panel, because I had planned to say innovation is also to have more women being able to talk about urban heating system and all that kind of stuff. So I'm very pleased to be here with you today. I really want to thank UNEP for this invitation, but also that all UNEP and SE4ALL initiative to help us cities to work so much more closely day and days about our district system and to also have that possibility to meet more and more and work with private companies. I was asked to tell you about the city of Paris and how we're coping today with our urban heating but also cooling district system, to let you know about our action today. First, let me say just a word about the global context in which we're working. The city of Paris has been involved in climate action for now 10 years, nearly 10 years. Our first climate action plan was adopted by the City Council in 2007. We have 3 main commitments to be reached: to mitigate GHG emission by 25%, make energy efficiency, to reduce energy consumption by 25% too, and develop green energy. All of that to be reached by 2020. And this climate action plan is inspiring all our public policy, housing, transportation, energy, public procurements, and also is trying to mobilize more and more all the stakeholders of the city. And I have also to add that since last September, we have our first adaptation strategy for the city of Paris. In this prospect, obviously, our urban heating system has been identified as a key infrastructures to meet these commitments. Few people know, but actually Paris, a huge portion of Paris are heated by the urban district energy that started to be built in 1927 and now with 500 kilometers of pipes. It is the 3rd largest, as far as I know, urban heating system in Europe, and it supplies more than 500,000 inhabitants every day. Our work today is centered on greening our energy mix as far as possible, by the valorization of waste, by replacing the last fuel plants that we have by biogas, by the use more and more of biomass. We're gonna open by 2016, next year, one of the largest plants using biomass that we will be on one hand nearly finished with coal use, with coal use, but also we will avoid something like 500,000 tons of CO2 each year. And eventually we're working a lot these days about geothermy, because we have a high potential in Paris. So for instance, I just inaugurated some weeks ago a new geothermy plant in the northwest of Paris that is going to be heating around 4,000 social units. And what is original about that geothermy operation is that we mixed it with a water well, an emergency water well for the city in case we have problems on the water management. And I also want to precise this was done by our public company. We have in Paris a 100 public-run company for the water system that is now also going on the energy side, and I think it was worth mentioning that the company, we have like the private partnership, but also public-public partnership on that energy stuff. By 2016, we should be on 50 renewable, 50 renewable sources in the main in the mix of the urban heating system, which is actually a good point. It was one of our goals to reach it by 2015, 2016. And it's also interesting because it will allow us within the legal framework of France to lower the bills for the people in Paris, because with that 50 commitment being reached, we're going to have a change on VAT that would help to lower the bills. Just a word about the future. It's true we have a really important infrastructure right now, but we have to go further. We have four ways of going further. It's to develop even more that system through urban planning, obviously. We try to make more and more people connect to the network, especially offices and big buildings. I don't know how you say in English, all the offices, hospital, all that field of area of working. And we're going to do that through our partnership that we developed for 3 years with the major companies in Paris through the Paris Action Climate Charter. We also want to go further on innovating. We're working a lot these days on heat recovery. For instance, heat recovery on the sewage system. A swimming pool in south of Paris, the water of the swimming pool is going to be heated in the next weeks with the heat of the sewage. And we are also working on innovative system. For instance, in the City Hall of Paris, for some weeks now, we have a new system combining the urban heating system with the cooling heating system, but also with the non-drinkable water network, which is a specificity of Paris. And these new systems allows us to warm and cool the buildings at the same time, and actually to make a lot of energy consumption safe. Last point would be that now Paris is a big challenge to build that system within the metropolitan area. Maybe you know, maybe not, because it's a real French debate, but by the 1st of January next year, the metropolitan area of Paris is going to be created. Right now we are still thinking our strategy within the borders of Paris, which is actually quite small as an area. Tomorrow is going to be the metropolitan area. So the idea is much more to extend that system. Some cities around Paris are already connected to our urban heating district, but the idea now is to develop it at a larger scale and to build a common strategy. Having said that, I just want to say also a word about the urban cooling system of Paris. It's the first largest in Europe, around 80 kilometers right now. It's a network that is allowing us to avoid 22,000 tons of CO2 each year, and to make a saving of 65% of energy consumption compared to if we had individual infrastructures. It's actually also a network that is dedicated right now to offices, commercial services, museum, hospital, nothing to do in housing buildings. And also I have to precise that is also a network very well secured. We have no health issue. I want to mention it because sometimes when I speak about hospitals, people have a question about that. And this is also be a key thing to achieve our climate action plan for the next year. We have new developments to come. We just signed with a company to extend about 10%, we're going to add 10% of the surface that is concerned by the network and the people deserved by supplied by it in the 2 years to come, and also gonna work on geothermy, to use also geothermy to supply that network. So this is mainly how it is in Paris now, and how maybe from there we can start our conversation. Just to conclude, to say that obviously we have these two major networks, but it's going to be a big deal for us in the next years to pursue, to innovate, also to develop these infrastructures. It's also a key for us, infrastructures, to go towards the 100% of renewable that the city of Paris just committed to next to the Declaration of Paris in the summit Cities for Climate that we held with Mayor Hidalgo and Mike Bloomberg on Friday the 4th. And definitely, and I think we all assess it here, it's a tool, a really important tool to build that sustainable city that we're all calling for. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand that you have to leave, or you can stay a little bit? Okay. Maybe then I'll open the floor to see if anybody has any questions. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Blau before she leaves? Hi, good morning. Thank you for those remarks and for your leadership. I'm Jennifer Lakey from the World Resources Institute. I'm curious about what are the mechanisms are that Paris and your administration in particular are using to share these experiences and the technology approaches that you've taken with other cities, whether they're in France or elsewhere in Europe or around the world.
To share with other cities, you're right, because there's like a lot of noise I didn't hear. Okay. We are part of many different cities network, so we have much more, I would say, bilateral exchange about the cooling with some city like London and some others, but yeah, mainly it's through the networks and some really bilateral exchange. I have to say, but I have like some people from the climate team within the city, you know, like the technical that know much more than the politicians. So maybe, maybe you have exchanged much more than I have.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, well, we're very lucky to have heard from Paris. I always think it's a nice symbol to tell people that the Louvre and all the beautiful historic buildings of Paris are actually heated with district heating, and that they're using the Seine River to do cooling. I think it's always a nice example. And of course, Paris is a leader with the target of integrating 50% renewables by 2020 or recovered heat in their district heating system. So we're very lucky to have them here. Thank you again. So I'd like to turn first to you, Niels. And in Denmark, when we think about renewable energy, Denmark is often one of the champions that comes to the forefront. And Denmark has been very successful in integrating very high shares of intermittent wind. What has been the recipe, for this successful integration of wind and high shares of renewables in Denmark?
Am I on here? Yeah. No, I think there's no doubt that district energy has been a big chunk to that. And the interesting thing is, of course, that district energy is, on one side, a very efficient way. So it provides a lot of energy efficiency, actually, in distributing energy. On the other side, it is an enabler or a backbone or an infrastructure that allows to easily integrate a lot of renewables. In the beginning, we often thought about district energy as a way to do combined heat and power on traditional power plants, or to use excess heat out of stuff. Today, in Denmark, 2/3 of all heat in the entire country is being distributed by district energy. 98% of all heat in Copenhagen is being distributed by district energy. And for the country as a total, 52% of all the energy coming through the district energy network, 52%, more than half, is renewable already today. So that means that, and that's not even counting in a lot of electricity done by wind or solar. It is biomass, it's thermal solar, it's geothermal, it's biogas. So it's a lot of different, it's waste incineration. There's a lot of different sources that are green that already today are in the district heating network. By 2035, that number would be 100%. So in that sense, I think we need to look at district energy as a way, as a backbone that will allow us to make the transition. It's not a green energy in itself, but it is the backbone that allows us to actually do that. Now it's clear that in different parts of the world, we just heard here how it's happening in Paris. That's typical for Copenhagen, for Stockholm, for Paris. Now also, hopefully in the future, for London, that we are taking this approach to it in established cities. If we go to more developing countries like China, there's a city up north in China with 4 million inhabitants, where the issue of actually moving this way is really for pollution reasons. I mean, I was actually in that city this autumn on the day when they turned on the heat, or the heating systems, all the boilers. And if the limit to what you can measure on pollution was 500 whatever units per cubic meters, then on that day it was 800. I tell you, that was like a very foggy day in Denmark. It was just not fog, it was really pollution. So that's for a very different reason. Now that city of Anshan in the northern part of China can actually heat the entire city. In the first phase for 2 million people, eventually for 4 million people, out of excess heat from one steel company placed in the middle of the city. So that's a totally different. Now they will get great payback on that. So the financial payback will be like 3 years on that investment, but in return, they get cheaper heat bills for the inhabitants, they get extra income for the steel company, and they get this pollution taken away. So I think there are many more angles to talking about district energy, and that I think we can see in many other Chinese cities. We can see that in Russian cities as well. So there are actually two different ways of approaching this, depending on where you are. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's very important to highlight that there's multiple drivers for district energy in cities due to the multiple benefits that district energy provides in a city. Marika, if I can turn to you. we've just heard a little bit about the various drivers leading cities to look at district energy as a solution. What are your cities telling you? I mean, you're representing a network of over 1,000 cities. What do you hear from your cities?
There we go. Thanks, Lily. Indeed, ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, has a network of more than 1,000 cities that are mega cities and small towns and everything in between, representing about 770 million citizens in the world. And we've seen this growing commitment to tackle climate change, to switch to sustainable energy. This is clearly a wonderful trend. And we work with C40, for example, and UCLG in the Compact of Mayors to help cities develop good action plans and to map where is the potential. And district energy is clearly one of those areas that is growing in terms of on the modern side, modern district energy systems combined with renewable energy. People do not yet clearly understand what this means, but they do understand that this is the way we need to explore. So I think there's tremendous growth potential in this field. Clearly, we need more experts and we need to get that knowledge. What does it mean? What are the policies that you can put in place? The technologies, the renewable energy fuel mix. I think also, as the gentleman from Danfoss mentioned, we need to better understand what can we do, and we know we need to accelerate. Local governments, and we're talking about cities, but I'm talking about local governments. That is actually for us the leading driver in a community that can decide we wish to set a target. And this can include also setting a target for district energy. They also develop these solid action plans, but these need to connect to sustainable development. And 2016 is the year of sustainable development goals, very much exploring what this means. How does the climate work connect to the SDGs? This is very, very much of the heart of all our members. We've seen it's starting in India with the city of Rajkot as one of our project partners in another project which we've brought into working with UNEP on district energy, and they wish to pilot a district cooling system, really starting from zero base, but very keen, very enthusiastic. And we need that political commitment on board. The mayor, the commissioner are working with us to explore what this could look like, and we will train the technical colleagues to do that mapping. But they do this to reduce, in India, but also in Colombia, looking at reducing electricity demand. I think using that for cooling and switching to renewables is very much at the heart, because the grids are not always necessarily stable, and they're looking for solid, reliable energy systems. Also reducing ozone depletion from using refrigerant use. We know we need to switch to cleaner, more sustainable solutions. In China, we're looking at reducing air pollution. Very practical, local benefits that can be used from using modern district energy systems. And we know that energy is traditionally the national government area of work, but we are also asking for national governments to explore with their subnational and local governments how to optimize the systems, because we need more decentralized systems. We need systems that are intelligent and connect to each other. And district energy is exactly that. You can use cogeneration, trigeneration, bringing cooling, heating, electricity demand together. The future is open. We also wish to connect this, as Paris indicated, focus on that 100% renewable transition. We're leading a network on this for cities and regions to move to that next generation. Again, new field for most of us. When Mark from C40 mentioned that the cities can now scale up, our members were the ones who tested and were the pilots. So we're extremely proud to have Gothenburg on board, Vecchio. All the cities that have started with the district energy are definitely part of the ICLEI group. And you might have never heard of these cities, but they're there and they're pooling their resources and efficiency and enthusiasm.
Thank you, Marika. You mentioned that we need to better understand what we can do, and I think that leads me to my next question to Carlo, in the sense of how is Veolia supporting cities to integrate more renewables into district energy systems, or improve efficiency, or capitalize on all these different benefits that we hear across the panel today?
Thanks. let's start with the renewables part, because I think it's a very important issue around district heating. Sometimes district heating, especially in Eastern Europe and in most of Europe, has been connected to traditional energy. Well, as Nils was saying before, in reality, district heating is a backbone where you can attach different sources of energy, and so it facilitates the transition to renewable energy, because you can plug new components of renewable energy to an existing grid, pretty much like the electric grid. So what do you need and what can be done? I think it's very important, and Marika was saying it before, there is still a vast potential in countries which have a certain level of sophistication, but also in places, we heard it before from the deputy mayor, even Paris, which is a very advanced city on that, has still a vast potential on adding renewables. So what can be done? A lot can be done. You can plug, for instance, biomass-fired boilers or combined heat and power, which are biomass-fired. And this is something, for instance, we are doing in many countries and cities in Eastern Europe. Most of them still rely on coal, which is, as you can imagine, as bad as it gets in terms of CO2 emissions. And this is being progressively substituted with local biomass. But you can do also more sophisticated things, and there I think a key point is the public-private willingness to work together. I'll make you a small example from Germany, Braunschweig, where we run the water system, the water treatment plant, which is at the same time using the sludges to produce biogas. Other bio-waste is added to the mix to produce biogas that then produces energy through a combined heat and power. The heat goes to the heating network, and a part of the heat coming out of the water treatment plant is also reused for the heating network, and the electricity, which is green electricity, goes to the grid. Now you have together a water treatment plant, which is owned by the municipality. You have a district heating network. You have waste, bio-waste coming from agricultural waste, coming from food industry. So you have a bunch of players working that need to work together, and this is crucial if you want to really get all the possible benefits and all the possible potential. So it cannot be only done by the public sector, it cannot be only done by the private sector. You really need to work together, sometimes in creative ways. But then the impact is amazing, because this is the only plant I know of this size in wastewater treatment that is energy positive. Most of the water treatment plants are energy negative, so they need energy. This one is slightly energy positive and is completely powered by renewable energy.
I think that's very inspiring, and I think your example is very clear that this is the beauty of the solution is also the challenge, I guess, in that it integrates multiple sources and allows for multiple systems to be integrated. But at the same time, that's the challenge also, to bring all those partners together and integrate renewables in these systems. I'd like to turn now to Ms. Bošović. I'd like to ask, actually, in Serbia, you've made a clear decision to make district heating expansion and modernization the core of your climate action plans. Can you tell us a little bit about why you've decided to take this course of action in Serbia?
Thank you. For the first national climate ambition of Serbia, and then skate of district heating in Serbia 2010, 1.3 million households were connected. Serbia cities have the infrastructure to switch heating to multiple renewable sources. Can these use cities district heating systems help achieve Serbia's national climate and renewable strategy? Current district heating enabling switch of buildings heat demand to renewables such as biomass and geothermal, and the country is developing new networks to further achieve this. Will be more difficult to switch heat of individual buildings to renewable heat.
Thank you. So I guess one of the key components was also that the large-scale renewables can not provide heating as easily for one building, but being able to actually provide it to multiple buildings through district energy allows for the large-scale renewables to be connected. Niels, if I can come back to you, we've just heard also from Carlo about the role, and Marijke and the panelists, about the role of the different actors. And I'd like to know from your perspective, what role do you think that cities are playing to expand the uptake of district energy? And how can we enable this?
I think that actually from where we stand right now, that is a key question. I can just add to, I think, what Carlo was saying. There's actually a city in Denmark called Aarhus, where the wastewater treatment plant produces 90% more energy than it actually consumes. And does all the same things. And I think it's a good case because it actually shows how many people needs to work together. I think we've come a long, long way on having governments and ministers saying that district energy is the right way to go. But if I make the analogy to a business, that's setting the direction, or at best defining the strategy. It really is not execution. And to get to execution, I think that's where cities and mayors become extremely important, because they are the decision makers that can make real projects, that can kind of get the right people together. And it's absolutely, I'm fully in line with what Carlo said here, that it needs to be private and public, and probably in many cases several public institutions and several private players to make it happen. There are no one company or one thing that will do everything. And that's also why we need cities to we need mayors to make these decisions, to step forward and say we want to do this, and be ambitious on where it takes. And you can see those cities that did that have actually brought themselves in a very favorable situation. So that's where it is, and I think the time is right for the focus to get on cities.
And how do you think that we can all work together? I know the Danfoss has been very much leading in the international sphere through partnerships. And is that something that you see as critical to support cities in scaling up district energy?
Yeah, and I took note, I think in the panel just before this, I took note of the gentleman from C40 was saying something along the lines that no mayor wanted to be the first one. Every mayor wanted to be the second one, to take on something that has been proven to work, so still be an early mover, but not be the one to run the risk. And I think the good news is that by now we have the demonstration projects. We have proven that it works. There are cities that operate it. So I think the time is good for all mayors now to step up, to be the early followers to make this happen now. And I think so we've overcome one hurdle. It would be interesting to hear Carlo's point of view on that as well. But that's what we see, and I think what we're seeing in Belgrade and in Serbia, I think is a good example now of saying, okay, now this works. We know we can do this, and why take all the traditional steps, the classical things that maybe the more developed countries have had to go through? Why not leapfrog to what is actually the newest technology, like people are doing on mobile telephone systems? And I think that's important. And I can tell you, we are very committed as Danfoss to be there to showcase that it works in every type of environment. And I think we are getting to the point that we can showcase that, and we can show demonstration projects. We can bring people to see real operating projects and see the real benefits. And I think that makes us able to go on to the next phase of this journey.
Thank you. I think the point about leapfrogging is extremely critical, and often the path that cities have taken here is the pathway that other cities will be taking in the future when they look to integrate renewables, except they can start from a different standpoint and leapfrog and not be locked in to different technologies. So, Marijke, how do you think that we can be helping cities in enabling district energy and supporting their ambitions?
There we go. The District Energy in Cities initiative is clearly the place to go. It started with an excellent publication from UNEP, and thanks to you to pulling that together. That was an amazing job. That's a must-read for everybody, for every single mayor and councillor out there. But we need to give much more guidance and support, so raising awareness on the potential. The role of ICLEI in this would be, we're a leading partner in the District Energy Initiative. We'll work very closely with Danfoss and Empower. We need that public-private mix, getting people on board, getting them informed, and raising the level of technical knowledge. Also focusing on policy development. The aim would really not be just focusing on demonstration projects, although we do ask our cities in the initiative to do that as well. But they need to commit, and it's a long-term commitment. This is going to be a love affair for life and beyond, in a way. We are going to focus as ICLEI on capacity building, webinars, events, getting people to with the peer-to-peer exchange between our experienced cities called champion cities and the learning cities. And they're very keen to do so, the ones that are experienced. We also wish to then scale up and do replication in regions where the context is clearly very relevant. One thing that I think we need to do more explicitly is work with national governments to get those enabling framework policies in place. I think we can learn from the Nordic countries what went wrong and where that was needed to scale up and accelerate. We know what needs to be in place, so it's literally speaking to the right people and getting good decisions at all levels of government in place. And I think last but not least, in India, for example, 5 cities have already been rapidly assessed, so that rapid assessment, quick scan, can we do this? Is the potential in place? And then moving to a longer and more deeper investigation on which policies the local governments can roll out. That is quite key, and we're looking forward to doing this in all parts of the world, South America, Africa, Asia, also hopefully then also in the Nordic countries, in the global north. The scale-up can happen without so much financial support, hopefully. But I think in the global south, we need to understand the financing models that can be put in place. Also exploring public-private partnerships. I think this is not a model that's unfolded enough yet, and there's good potential in that side. From ICLEI's side, we have also committed to establish a city demand-side project pipeline in the Transformative Actions Program, the TAP. TAP the potential is our slogan, and we wish to see more district energy projects feeding into that, and we will also help to find financing from development banks, from public-private partnerships, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you, Marijke. Indeed, it's been great working with you and we have a very large sort of pipeline of cities that are, waiting and knocking at the door for help. And now we need to really leverage the partnership to be able to provide that expertise and transfer of knowledge to the cities that we see making these requests for support. If I can turn to you, Ms. Bolshevik. How Belgrade is the largest city in Serbia, and how is Belgrade currently using the infrastructure to provide affordable low-carbon heating in Belgrade? How is the city taking on that leadership role?
Belgrade district heating is mostly run on the natural gas with some oil and coal economy. This is not sustainable due to fluctuating gas prices, and environmentally the city can improve. That is why Belgrade will be exercising the potential to switching the district heating system to use low carbon sources such as biomass, waste heat from power stations, and possibly geothermal. This is important with our 60% of the city's residents connected to district heating can make real steps to connect them to cleaner and lower carbon sources. What is needed is support, training, capacity building, technical assistance, independent assessment, and best practice sharing from other cities worldwide. This is why the Republic of Serbia welcomed Global District Energy in Cities initiative and is proud that Belgrade is one of the few selected pilot cities in the world to receive the support. Support is good for Belgrade, but also significant is the replication potential to other cities in the country and region, sharing learnings, tools, and best practice.
Thank you very much. We're very much looking forward to working with you and your city. And I think the point on national replication is key, also touches upon what the panelists have said, that we also have to have the right national support, whether it's in the frameworks or devolution of authority or in scaling up and replicating best practice. And so if I could turn to you, Carlo, I wanted to ask you about barriers. We've heard quite a bit about some of the barriers, but you're operating and investing in district energy around the world, in cities around the world, and I think it would be nice to hear a bit about what you see as the key barriers.
Sure, there are many barriers. Let me try this one. Sure, there are many barriers. There are many barriers, and I would say most of them are man-made, so they're not technical barriers. One of the biggest was mentioned before by Mark Watts, is the lack of awareness, and it was said many times. Lack of awareness brings lack of planning. These are big, complex systems. If you talk about district energy, it's complex, it's big, it touches every part of the city. You need a plan. It doesn't grow by itself. And even only land planning, it's knowing where you go. I was quite struck by the data that was brought, that if you have a plan, you are making progress at 60% more than if you don't. It doesn't surprise me, but it gives you an idea of the size. Another big missing point is and we hope to get some out of the COP21, is a pricing for the benefits. So the CO2 pricing would be key, would be core, because it would allow to put a price tag, and it would solve a lot of issues around financing. Financing is always there if you have a good project. And a good project is a project that allows you to reduce the cost. So CO2 pricing is definitely a massive, the lack of a coherent CO2 pricing is a massive barrier. But also there are many more in terms of policies. Some policies are contradictory, and that's a devil in the details kind of game. I have a couple of examples. If you renew a building because you're going for energy efficiency, you can count the renewable energy you produce in the building as part of your efficiency envelope, while you cannot consider the energy efficiency of the renewable energy that comes to you through a heating network. So that's clearly a nonsense. And in some countries this happens, and it's just contradictory regulation that needs to be ironed out, but it can have a massive impact. And there are many more, I would say, on the field of regulation. Some countries, for instance, do not allow concessions. And as you can imagine, a network, a district heating network, is a natural monopoly. It would be completely economically nonsense to replicate it, to have 2 or 3 intersecting, so you need 1. And in many cases, you would like it to be run by somebody who has a technical competence and in a regulated way. Some countries still lack on district heating and district cooling, which is the same thing, this kind of framework. So I would say many barriers, most man-made.
Thank you. I guess since we've just been inundated with the barriers, let's ask each panelist if they can give a 30-second on what they think would be the most important thing that we could do today to move towards overcoming some of these barriers. Of course, I know there's a lot of work to be done to remove those barriers, but I think it would be nice to hear from you what it would be the top 2 most important actions that we can take. Perhaps I can start with you, Marika.
Well, that's an easy one. I think information is what we definitely are dedicated to sharing with local governments. We also wish to support them with the action planning, that this concept is embedded in a long-term sustainable action plan, and encourage them to report. If we report, we can link to that MRV aspect, measurable, reportable, verifiable, and linking to my role as the director in the Carbon Center. We've got the Carbon Climate Registry, which is there for reporting by local and subnational governments on their climate actions. And we wish to capture these information to show trends, to show also where the gaps are and where the financing gaps are, because cities can flag if they're looking for financing in the registry, and we will then also actively support them to make the connection. Good projects have good funding. That's what you said. There we go. I'll connect to you, definitely.
My message is Serbia made efforts to improve energetic and ecology. Thank you.
In addition to what has been said, I would say CO2 pricing. That's a very important point. And more public and private, public-private initiatives. That's it.
Yeah, maybe to close it off here, it's, I agree with what's been said, but I think there's one thing that I hope will happen now coming back from COP21. I think UNEP and others and all together has done a great job in increasing awareness. And I think I think a lot more people now have their eyes open for the opportunities and actually also have a will to go this way. Now I think we need to go into action. So I think it's very, very important that we now stay focused with those cities that are ready and have the vision to actually go forward and do something, and then select those and make some real successful projects there. I think that's more important than just continuing an awareness campaign. That will go on the side, but now let's go from awareness to action.
That's fully agreed. I think if I can summarize the panel, I mean, we heard a lot about the multiple benefits of district energy at the beginning of the panel, and the key drivers that we see across many cities being not just renewable energy integration, but also air quality, HCFC reduction, jobs, and many other multiple benefits. We also heard a lot about information as a basis for action, and that it's important to know, better understand the situation, including mapping your city, understanding the resources, to be able to plan and be able to actually develop projects, better information leading to capacity, leading to greater investments. We heard about district energy as a backbone and a facilitator and an approach, and so more of a approach than thought of as a technology, sort of a connector of multiple sources. And we heard importantly about the role of mayors and cities as key in being able to address the barriers and scale up district energy as managers of infrastructure and being able to integrate multiple utilities and sectors. We've seen around the world with visionary leadership, the technology is proven, it requires visionary leadership and the policies and the right national framework to be able to scale up district energy. And so ending on the point that Niels mentioned, I think we are ready to act. It's a matter of now connecting with the right partnerships and moving into implementation. I'd like to open up the floor for questions, if there's any questions for our panelists.
Bonjour, je vais parler en français, je suis président de Planet It's Up to You. Ma question, et je pense qu'elle doit être fondamentale durant la COP21, comment envisager une grandeur éthique, on emploie le mot éthique tous les jours, afin qu'on puisse quand même surveiller la dimension scientifique et des solutions qu'on essaye de proposer. Parce que justement, vous l'avez dit, il y a des hommes, et c'est le capital humain et les échanges qui vont faire qu'on va pouvoir avancer, sans être des censeurs. Comment peut-on imaginer à la taille d'une ville, lorsqu'il y a des erreurs de fait, qu'il y ait des remises en question afin de ne plus rééditer ces erreurs? Je prends un exemple, un cas d'école. Je suis très souvent au Canada. Il y a des erreurs partout dans le monde en ce moment. Il y a 3 semaines, on a ouvert les vannes pour qu'il y ait 8 milliards de litres d'eau, c'était dans tous les journaux, déversés dans le Saint-Laurent. Dans ces cas-là, le but n'est pas de juger le maire en place, c'est de savoir à qui peut incomber les responsabilités. Donc ma question, j'y reviens, la grandeur éthique à tous les stades de responsabilité, comment va-t-on pouvoir mettre en place voilà, une responsabilité collective pour les scientifiques, pour le citoyen, pour tout le monde? Voilà. Merci.
I assume you need translation, right? It's very difficult to translate, especially as I'm not a professional interpreter. The question is about ethical issues, how to make sure that ethical issues are being taken, are addressed in the work, to simplify the question. Yeah.
I'll answer in English or in French, as you prefer. It's a very good question. It's a difficult one. I think there is a lot of there are at least 2 big axes we need to go through. One is awareness. When you say about ethical issues, we tend to think about a big corporation being unethical. On carbon footprint, in many cases, are also the individuals who do not think in an ethical way. So there is, and I'm, you know, you might think it's a minor thing, but taking your car instead of taking your bicycle, it's at the end also an ethical decision sometimes. So there is a lot around information. I also believe there is a big need of enforcement because enforcement is a very important part of the equation, and in particular on renewables, on district heating and in cities. I would just tell you that, to my astonishment, some developed world cities still have coal-fired boilers in cities, and much more than you think. Still have heavy oil-fired boilers in cities. And it's a matter of enforcement, because regulation would exist, is in place, and is simply not enforced. So I think that the 2 axes of awareness and enforcement need to go together. And I'm sorry if it is generic sometimes, but I truly believe we need both.
Hello, thank you very much. Wonderful, wonderful discussion and presentations. Ted Sheldon here with the province of British Columbia in Canada. It's kind of a 2-part question, one about the present and going into the future as far as trends. One is about ownership and the other is about fuel type. Can you speak, and I apologize if I missed a bit of it, you may have answered part of this, but what is the most common type of ownership today internationally? Is it municipalities, is it public-private, et cetera, and what's the trends going forward or that you'd like to see going forward? I know, Marika, you talked about private-public partnerships, et cetera, so what's kind of commonplace today and what trend do you see going forward? And then also fuel type. What's the most common fuel type for district energy systems in an international scan? Just general comment. And what do you see that trend changing going forward? If that's 2 fair questions to ask.
I can go first, but I'm pretty sure here that we should have Carlo follow up, given that you look more countries. It really depends. I think if you take Russia, China, it is by far into coal or at least fossil fuels. That would be it. So it's basically boilers, and the efficiency of the distribution network comes into having central boilers serving areas of a city, smaller areas of a city. So that's kind of the old generation, or the first or second generation district heating, if you want. If you go to Denmark, I was saying that 52% of the energy into a Danish system across the country is green. So that's a lot of biomass, it's geothermal, it's solar, it's thermal solar, so not solar electricity, but just solar panels that would go straight into. So it really depends. It really depends where you are, but the tendency is clearly to use district energy networks to become more green. As Carlo was talking about, plugging on whatever solutions you have. I think waste incineration or those kind really take up right now big time throughout the world, because it solves another issue as well. So that's the direction. Now, with the newer generations, we're talking about 4th generation district heating systems. For instance, that's where the temperature you need to circulate in the pipes gets lower and lower. And that allows you to go to geothermal. It allows you to take waste heat out of many more processes. It allows you to do this combined heat and power, even off waste incineration, where you have a lot of flexibility. So you can run up and down. Do I want to make a lot of heat today, or do I want to make a lot of electricity? That actually then gives the benefit that you can have more wind power on your electrical grid, because you provide flexibility on the backbone. So we need to start thinking about grids as not only the electrical grid, but as a smart grid that ties together the heating and the electricity grid. So I think it depends on how advanced the country is or the systems are. Like in China right now, what we're trying to help is actually tying together a lot of these old kind of distributed boiler networks, tying them together and allow waste heat to go into those. And that's kind of the next generations, knowing how to balance those systems, getting the average temperature down, still allowing enough heat to flow that everybody gets their heat. That's where it's going. So it's definitely going greener. It's going on more advanced and more efficient systems. But
I think it's a perfect summary. Thanks, Niels. I'll stick to the first part of the question on the ownership, what you see around. There again, you see almost everything. You see publicly owned and publicly operated. You see, in many cases, publicly owned and partially privately operated. You also see some private networks around there. I think what is in the ownership of the network, I don't think it's a main issue. I think they can. There can be all sort of ownership, just like you have in many other systems. It is not really a deciding factor. What I think is a very important factor is the capability of sharing the experience and sharing the know-how. Even the best city, even the largest city, runs one network. And it can be as big as you want, but it's one. So there is not a lot of space to learn from different experiences, because you only have one. Finding a way through, for instance, private operators who own and operate or operate many different grids, or networks of cities exchanging experience about their network and exchanging also the know-how and even the personnel, I think is much more crucial. And there again, I think there are two paths: allowing and fostering more operations by private operators, and exchanging experience among cities and among publicly owned companies. Both have still a long way to go.
Thibaud, if I could ask you to now introduce the next panel. Thank you very much.
I am now honored to invite Ms. Tina Gahe from the from the Finnish Innovation Fund, and who will be making the introduction. Mr. Bruno Gardner from the Carbon Trust as the moderator, Mr. Ulf Kammer, who is Vice Mayor of Göteborg in Sweden, Mr. Matthew Panchart, Deputy Mayor for Environment and Energy of the City of London, the Councillor Thibaud Magnoni, Executive Mayor of Mungong Metropolitan Municipality in South Africa, and I understand that Mr. Gustavo Francesca from the Global Environment Facilities had some issues and could not make it, so I will not call him on stage. So, Ms. Tina Kalle, the floor is yours. Thank you.
This doesn't... Now it's working. Good afternoon or good morning, everybody. As we are tied with schedule, I try to be very precise and give the honored panelists a few key points that I find very important. As we are now talking about delivering investment to enable carbon neutral cities, I would like to be optimistic and highlight a little bit of the opportunity side. As we all know, these global megatrends like climate change, urbanization, digitalization are really transforming the whole infrastructure in the cities, how we are going to live, how we are going to eat, sleep, move, and live. And we have just currently made a study where we found out that just by building 26 smart cities in the next 5 years' time, there will be some $1.6 trillion market available. So just in the next 5 years, such market is available for new smart and clean solutions and energy systems. Also, we analyzed that the renewable energy market is forecasted to cover more than 40% of the global energy mix by 2050, which obviously, if you look from the investment side, I would like it to be quadrupled and go faster. So I would like to ask the panelists, for example, from London and Gothenburg, to maybe open up a little bit how we can speed up those investments, because these are really the crucial ones, obviously. But then I would like to give a couple of examples, because I come from Finland. Finland is a Nordic country, a very open country, and I think we should really innovate and to be even more open than we are today. We have the most open data in the world, I believe. We are very famous for the combined power and heat system. I think it's the most efficient in the world. So as the previous panelists have been discussing how this can be really the backbone for the future energy system and an infrastructure system, it's a good start. But I want to challenge you by saying that carbon neutrality is really transforming all the systems in a way that we completely need new ways of collaborating with the public, private, and the citizens. So I would like to just give a couple of examples of the work we are doing today. For example, in the Helsinki, which is our capital, Helsinki metropolitan area has now brought together some 20 biggest corporations that are working in all fields of infrastructure, in mobility, in energy, and in consumer clean tech. Then we have 3 cities, Helsinki, Espoo, Vantaa, and the government. And we are going to finance a new project that is going to create new, more, let's say, concepts for energy systems and mobility system to transform the whole city infrastructure in the next 5 years. It's a very ambitious plan, but I'm sure we can make it. And there we need the best international partners to be part of it. Then another example I would like to share is the city of Turku, which is in the west coast of Finland, and they have started raising it from the ambition point of view. They want to be carbon neutral 2040, and they have now introduced a model where they invite all the companies to come along together with the Turku Energy company, how we can speed up that renewable energy system and the cooling and heating system in the city. So very ambitious plans, but I'm confident that we can make it, but we need everybody on board, not only the utilities, but also the citizens and the companies to innovate. But as I know that the time is pressing, I would like to thank you now and give the floor to the panelists. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tina. That's a fantastic introduction, and always great to hear about the leading role that Finland is playing on this agenda. I think it's become very clear, both from the two panel sessions earlier this morning, but also COP21 more broadly, just what a critical role cities have to play in the global move to a low-carbon economy. What's also very clear is that in order for cities to realise their potential, there are a number of barriers that they need to overcome, and perhaps the greatest of all of those barriers is finance. So I think this is a great panel discussion to end on, and we've got some fantastic panellists here who have some brilliant experiences that they're going to bring to bear. So without further ado, because we are short on time, I will jump straight into my questions, and Ulf, I'll begin with you. Gothenburg has a district heating system, municipality owned, with already a large portion of waste heat, and I think very ambitious plans to become entirely powered by waste heat and renewables. Will you tell us a bit more about that and the city's role in attracting investment?
Yes. Hello. Is it going out now? Yes, now it is. Thank you. Yes, we have since the 70s district heating system, and I think one of the most important things is to see the long-time development in these systems. Whenever you take a decision, it's for a very long time, and that may be the hardest part of both starting and developing. For Gothenburg, it's like some 70% of the inhabitants in Gothenburg live in a house heated by district heating. Today, we have most of the energy coming from waste and from waste energy and waste incinerators. And our goal is by 2020 to be 100% fossil-free. Today, we still have some fossil gas and occasionally, actually, even oil, like 1 or 2 hours a year when it's very cold. But the rest is biofuel, forest residue mostly. For Gothenburg today, we don't have a problem with the investments, but we have developed this instrument called green bonds, which I think would be a very good instrument, especially for cities with a weaker economy, because then you can raise money from companies that want to direct their investments in green projects.
Thanks, Brett. Thank you. Excellent. Great. Moving on to Matthew. Matthew, your experience is London-based. London has recently incorporated district heating into its long-term energy plans. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you've gone about that, and again, the role or how you've gone about attracting investment?
Thank you. Well, we're a long way behind our Nordic neighbours. So we hear about huge penetrations of district heating. I think, was it 98% for one cities we heard, and very high percentages there. In London, we're a long way behind, but we are beginning to make some progress. And that is, the first instance is London's growing very quickly by 100,000 or so people a year. So that needs a lot of development, clearly, to house those people and create their jobs. So in the planning framework, in the planning regulations in London, we have very tight carbon targets with an assumption that new developments should be ready to be connected to a district heating system in the future, so to be ready for those pipes when they're developed. And also many developments, large-scale developments, perhaps mixed use, need to have an energy centre on site, generally combined heat power, so that to get that new energy infrastructure within the capital. And then we also have a team within City Hall which is bringing those projects to market. We received some grant funding from the European Investment Bank, just £3 million, not a huge amount, but we managed to leverage on that over £100 million of investment in new energy infrastructure in London. It's relatively new in the UK for this district heating systems, so we needed to sort of do energy master planning and then go through the planning system and take to market, often across planning authority boundaries, and also perhaps a number of developers as well on some of these large plots within London. And we really are beginning to get somewhere. And then also setting the rules of the market so that the price that those small generators get for their power is the proper market price. At the moment, they don't get a particularly good rate just because of the way the market is arranged, but we are close to becoming a junior, receiving a license from our energy regulator in the UK, which will allow City Hall to act as a broker between those small generators and the Transit Authority, which uses as much power as all the City of Leeds, so it's a very big energy consumer in London, to ensure those generators get a decent price for their energy, their power I should say, so that it becomes a better investable product for the markets.
Thank you, Matthew. And now, Thibaud, you have a number of roles, one of which is chairperson of the National Executive Committee at the South African Local Government Association. Can you tell us a little bit about how local governments are helping to attract investment to low-carbon projects?
Let me also say that South African cities are also in a learning curve. You know that South Africa is dependent on coal for energy. But you'll find that in most cities now, we have provided land for solar energy, solar farms, and also for wind farms, and also the use of waste to energy. So in that regard, yes, we are looking into investment, we are looking into innovation to make sure that at least we are able also to address the issue of carbon footprint.
Great, thank you. Now, we are running short on time. I think we've got time for one more question for each of our panelists, and then if we have time, we'll open it to the floor. Ulf, back to you. You mentioned briefly that Gothenburg has issued a green bond, the first Nordic green bond, which has been very successful in attracting private sector investment to your green projects. Is this something that you think other cities can learn from? Can you tell us a bit about your experience?
Yes, I think really it's not a, well, for me it's complicated, but for economists it's not a very complicated thing. It's how to define and direct investments. And right now there is an developing going on to certify projects so that we make sure that green bonds really are green bonds and not something just called green bonds. And that makes it a global arena where investors can find projects that they want to invest their money in. And we know that a lot of companies are de-investing from fossil fuel and searching other objects, and the green bonds can be one of them.
Thank you. Matthew.
And also let me indicate the city of Johannesburg also has launched the green bond. And in that regard, it is one of the leading cities in South Africa to make sure that we get investment on matters pertaining to green energy.
So two examples there for people to follow. So no excuse. The path has been well set. Matthew, final question for you. One of the things that London has done in order to help accelerate decentralized energy projects is to set up a decentralized energy delivery unit. What role has this played in the work to date that's taken place in London? And again, how can other cities around the world learn from your experience?
Thank you. The first thing I should say is London has also issued a green bond. They're very fashionable. And in fact, it was for our transit authority for some low carbon projects. And in fact, the cost of the money was cheaper than the traditional bond, which actually shows you that this market is a very attractive one, in fact, for cities to go to raise capital finance. But I just had to say that. But on the wider, the decentralized energy project delivery unit, an incredibly sexy title, which we are rebranding Energy for London in the new year, is a relatively small number of people. It's 3 or 4 within City Hall, and they have helped to bring those over £100 million projects I referred to earlier to market. In London, there are some barriers, and a lot of them, frankly, are governance barriers rather than some of the finance ones, and that's to do with the fact that we have 33 planning authorities below City Hall, below the mayor, and we also have often numbers of different developers who perhaps understandably, from their point of view, want to do the traditional route, which is individual domestic boilers, perhaps in their unit. So in order to meet our planning requirements, but also to help them bring those projects to market and to deliver them, those people help to do energy master planning. They then help to do some of the technical engineering solutions and help it through planning to bring those projects to market. And I think that £3 million investment by the European Investment Bank really has delivered huge projects, and we have another 250 million or so in the pipeline, including a very exciting one in the Lee Valley, which, if you know London, is very close to a waste energy facility in Edmonton, which are going to finally make into a combined heat power plant and heat thousands of new homes that we're delivering in London.
Great, thank you. Ulf, I think you wanted to come in with one more point.
Yes, you can use the green bonds also the other way around, because as I think all of you know, not all politicians are that very fond or active on the green side, and the green bonds can be an argument for getting them on your side, because you get a better economy for the green projects, and that can be the thing that wins them over.
So, as with the world's efforts to limit global warming to 2 degrees, we are running out of time. But very quickly, Thibaud, one more question. Your another role is that you're the executive mayor of Manguang Metropolitan Municipality. Can you very briefly tell us about some of your low-carbon energy projects, please?
Yes, mainly we have provided land to private investors to build solar farms because of the climate in South Africa. You know, we have the sun there. So mainly we are working on that, and also we are working on turning waste into energy, which is working quite well for now. Basically what we are doing as the municipality, we are also providing to the grid this alternative energy. And our intention is, of course, to buy energy from also the private sector for use in our local area. There's a city that we are building presently, of which we have an ambition that it will be 90% solar driven in our area. It's quite a big project, and we all are looking forward to it working. I'm very much excited about that.
Great, thank you very much, and thank you all for your brief answers, very much appreciated. Now, I'll sum up in 30 seconds. I think finance is the key barrier, but not the only barrier. Long-term planning is essential. These are really large-scale projects involving many actors. Other barriers can be overcome through support such as technical assistance, and governance is key, working with many, many different planning authorities and delivery bodies. Finance, the one thing that cities can do is use their finance intelligently to leverage finance from the private sector. And finally, green bonds. Green bonds are really the answer. So there you have it.
Thank you so much for this very interesting panel. So it is now my pleasure and my honor to call on the floor His Excellency Christian Jensen, who is the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Denmark and Deputy Prime Minister. He's also a spokesperson for the Liberal Party Venstre, and he was before that Minister for Taxation between 2004 and 2010, and has been a member of the Parliament since March 11, 1998. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, and ladies and gentlemen, today half of the world's population is living in cities. This is a figure which will increase to 70% by 2050. I myself is a part of this statistic. I come from a small village in the western part of Denmark, but in the Monday morning I go to live in Copenhagen. When I arrive in Copenhagen after the weekend, I am greeted by the large windmills that are there. Copenhagen has chosen a clear strategy for sustainability. Coming in every morning, in the harbor, you have the wind plants. You can also see the energy plants where the power is generated from household waste. This is a way where we can produce climate-friendly electricity and cheap district heating that heats my apartment in Copenhagen. Copenhagen has in itself set a target to become carbon neutral by 2025. This is an ambitious goal and leads to innovative solutions on a large scale. Copenhagen is right now supplying 98% of its households with district heating by maximizing local resources and efficiency. For example, by using recycled waste heat, Copenhagen has avoided 655 tons of CO2 emissions and reduced the oil use by 1.4 million barrels of oil annually. In Denmark, the district heating is an integrated part of an ambitious national climate and energy policy. It is a cornerstone of Denmark's ambition to transit into 100% independence of fossil fuels. Today, through the district heating, Denmark has achieved a 20% reduction in national CO2 emissions since 1990. This is a real achievement, and we are very proud of it. In my view, district heating is not an expensive technology. If city has the right enabling environment, they can mobilize the investment needed. This has been achieved in Denmark, but we also see it being done in cities and countries around the world. The central theme here is to enable the cities to act on the local resources and efficiencies available to them. Cities can go green, just like Copenhagen, but also clear that we face one huge challenge. As the world continues to urbanize, sustainable development challenge will be increasingly concentrated in the cities, and sustainable solutions for cities are closely related to combating the climate change. Urban infrastructure has a long lifetime. It shapes the city for hundreds of years. Therefore, the way we build, maintain, and enhance the world's growing cities will determine their economic performance and the citizens' quality of life for hundreds of years. And the way we organize the city's infrastructure will have a huge impact on the level of greenhouse gas emissions for the rest of the century. Cities can, and in my opinion, will play a major role in the transition to a green economy. Among the core components of this transition will be integrating the energy efficiency and renewable energy technologies. We need to think in systems when addressing the challenges of energy, transport, waste, building, and industry sectors. Cities are, so to say, managers of infrastructure, and they are uniquely placed to integrate these systems and to maximize local resources use and the energy efficiency. A national political framework is important, but so is giving cities the right to choose the right solutions for themselves. Enabling cities by decentralizing authority has enabled Danish cities to identify the local resources and efficiencies and then establish the necessary local policies and conditions to unlock investments in low-carbon solutions. To replicate the success of cities like Copenhagen, the private sector must play a role. Although urbanization poses great challenges to cities, it's also proven to represent great opportunities for private companies. This has been the experience of many Danish companies. In Denmark, we possess a variety of world-leading competences and experiences that addresses the challenge arising from urbanization. Examples are efficient supply of energy and water, waste management, building retrofitting, smart cities, and clever urban planning. I believe that this is actually one of Denmark's really strong points within urbanization. We have the ability to make national governments, cities, and state agencies and the private sector join together to reach a common goal. This is the way we need to make a complex organism, and that, as it truly is, work at its best. For Denmark, international platforms such as the District Energy in Cities initiative enable us to extend our support to cities worldwide and to help them learn from what we are achieving in Denmark. We can enable visionary community leaders to take action on their cities' climate ambitions. We have supported this initiative's foundation, providing funds and support. Well, I'm not naive. I am aware of the scope that are at hand here. The task is huge. Building better, livable and low-carbon cities is a long-term journey. The good news is that we already have the necessary technology and the experience and the determination to make this journey happen. I've seen that every time I arrive in my second hometown in Copenhagen, and I would like to invite all of you to come and see for yourself. Be our guests, come to Copenhagen, see how we can do it. The sooner, the better. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this invitation. It's very tempting, actually. This has been a very dense and very exciting morning. I would like to thank you all for your participation, and now I will simply close the session. So thank you again, and I hope to see you again soon.